Imagine waking up every morning in a room the size of a parking space, no windows to the outside world, no human contact, no sound except the hum of a ventilation system and the echo of your own breathing. You eat alone, you exercise alone, you exist alone. And you will do this every single day for the rest of your life. This isn't a thought experiment. This isn't a nightmare. This is Tuesday. This is Wednesday. This is every single day inside ADX Florence, the most secure, most isolated, most psychologically brutal prison ever built on American soil. And the men trapped inside it, they are not ordinary criminals. They are the ones the system deemed too dangerous for anywhere else. There are 490 cells inside ADX. Each one is roughly 7 feet by 12 feet. Poured concrete walls, a concrete bed slab, a concrete desk, a concrete stool. Everything fixed. Everything gray. Inmates spend 23 hours a day in that room. The 1 hour of recreation is spent alone in a concrete enclosure, sometimes called the dog run, an outdoor cage just large enough to pace a few steps in either direction. Human contact? Near zero. Some inmates go years without a real conversation. Some would say that's justice. Others would say that's just another kind of darkness. And here's the part that keeps former wardens up at night. The part the Bureau of Prisons doesn't advertise. Solitary confinement at this level doesn't just punish the body. It dismantles the mind. But we'll get to that. First, let's talk about who's actually in there. For 17 years, the FBI chased a ghost. A figure who left no fingerprints, no witnesses, no digital trail. Because he didn't live in the digital world. He lived off-grid, in a 10 by 12 cabin in the Montana wilderness, with no electricity and no running water, writing a manifesto that he believed would wake humanity from its technological stupor. His name was Theodore John Kaczynski, and his weapon of choice? Handcrafted mail bombs, meticulously built, and mailed to universities, airlines, and executives across the country. Between 1978 and 1995, Kaczynski's bombs killed 3 people and injured 23 others. The FBI called him the Unabomber and ran one of the longest and most expensive investigations in their history. They couldn't catch him. He caught himself. In 1995, Kaczynski sent his 35,000-word manifesto to the New York Times and the Washington Post, demanding it be published. His brother David recognized the writing style and called the FBI. Kaczynski was arrested in his cabin in 1996, surrounded by bomb components and meticulous notes. He was sentenced to 8 consecutive life terms, plus 30 years. No possibility of parole. He was sent to ADX Florence, where he lived in near total isolation for over 2 decades, writing letters, filing legal complaints, and reportedly studying the works of other imprisoned radicals. In June 2023, Ted Kaczynski was found unresponsive in his cell. He was 81. The cause? Apparent suicide. Even his death felt like a disappearing act. Most people remember the 1993 World Trade Center bombing as a failed attack. A truck bomb detonated in the underground garage. 6 people died, thousands injured. But the tower stood. But that's not how Ramzi Youssef saw it. He saw it as a miscalculation. Youssef, a Pakistani Kuwaiti terrorist with a degree in electrical engineering, had designed the bomb to topple one tower into the other. Had it worked as intended? The estimated the death toll would have been in the hundreds of thousands. He fled the country hours after the blast, and then, almost unbelievably, he kept going. From the Philippines, he masterminded Operation Bojinka, a plot to simultaneously bomb 12 American commercial airliners over the Pacific Ocean. It was, at the time, the most ambitious terrorist plan ever conceived. It was only uncovered by accident, when a fire in his Manila apartment drew the attention of authorities. Youssef was captured in Pakistan in 1995 and extradited to the United States. He was convicted of both, the WTC bombing and the Bojinka conspiracy. Today, he sits in ADX Florence under special administrative measures, SAMs, the most restrictive conditions even within the most restrictive prison in America. He is allowed almost no communication with the outside world. Every letter is reviewed, every phone call monitored, every visitor screened with extreme scrutiny, kept there, not just because of what he did, but because of what he might still inspire. He drove a used car. He attended Mass every Sunday. He was quiet, meticulous, deeply religious, but he was also the most damaging spy in FBI history. Robert Hansen worked for the FBI for 27 years, and for 22 of those years, from 1979 to 2001, he was simultaneously selling America's most classified secrets to the Soviet Union and later Russia. He betrayed the identities of at least 3 double agents working for the United States, all of whom were subsequently executed. He handed over intelligence so sensitive that former CIA Director William Webster said his damage was possibly the worst intelligence disaster in U.S. history. He was never caught by advanced surveillance or tip-offs from defectors. He was caught because the FBI paid a former Russian intelligence officer for Hansen's own file. When agents surrounded him in 2001, making what he thought was a routine dead drop, Hansen reportedly said, "What took you so long?" He pled guilty to 15 counts of espionage and was sent to ADX Florence. In June 2023, the same month as Kaczynski, Robert Hansen was found dead in his cell. He was 79. 2 of the most notorious figures in ADX history, dead within the same month. The prison gives up its secrets reluctantly. He wanted to be on those planes. Zacharias Moussoui, a French citizen of Moroccan descent, was arrested just weeks before September 11, 2001, after raising suspicions at a flight school in Minnesota. He was already in custody when the attacks happened, and when he heard the news, by many accounts, he was glad. He was convicted of conspiracy related to the 9/11 attacks and sentenced to life in prison. He remains in ADX Florence to this day. But here's what makes Moussoui's story different. What happens inside changes a man. The ideology that drove him begins to crack against the silence of a concrete cell. Years into his imprisonment, he began reaching out to victims' families, sometimes in ways that seemed like attempts at explanation, sometimes in ways that seemed almost like remorse, genuine or manipulation. No one outside those walls can say for certain. The silence of ADX has a way of forcing reckonings no courtroom ever could. It's April 15th, 2013. Boston is celebrating. 23,000 runners. Hundreds of thousands of spectators. A city alive with cheering. Then, 2 pressure cooker bombs detonated near the finish line. 3 people killed. More than 260 injured. 16 people lost limbs. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev was 19 years old. He and his older brother Tamerlan had built the bombs in their apartment and carried them to the race in backpacks. The manhunt that followed paralyzed an entire American city. Tamerlan was killed in a firefight with police. Dzhokhar? He was found hiding in a boat in a Watertown backyard, wounded and bleeding. Surveillance footage captured something that shook investigators. After the bombs went off, while people lay bleeding on the ground, Dzhokhar walked away calmly, hands in his pockets, as if nothing had happened. He was convicted on all 30 counts against him and sentenced to death. His case has been mired in years of legal appeals. He currently resides at ADX Florence, in a facility where even death row adjacent inmates are held under conditions that some legal scholars argue themselves constitute cruel and unusual punishment. He is in his early 30s now, potentially decades left, inside those stone-cold walls. Now here's what they don't put in the press releases. The human brain is not built for silence. It is not built for stillness. It is not built to go days, weeks, months, sometimes years, without meaningful human connection. Neuroscientists who have studied solitary confinement describe what happens to isolated inmates as a form of psychological unraveling. No social interaction. The brain begins to generate its own stimulation. Hallucinations, paranoia, dissociation. That's a line, once crossed, that is very difficult to uncross. Researchers call this hypersensitivity to stimuli, where the scraping of a food tray slot sounds like a gunshot, where the hum of ventilation feels like it's getting louder every day. Former ADX inmates who have been released describe losing the ability to hold a conversation. They describe forgetting how to read facial expressions. They describe panic attacks in grocery stores. They couldn't process being around other people. Critics have repeatedly stated that prolonged solitary confinement meets the international legal definition of torture. The American Civil Liberties Union has called conditions at ADX a state-sanctioned horror. The Bureau of Prisons' official position is that ADX Florence is a necessary, humane facility for managing the country's most dangerous individuals. But some of the men inside disagree so violently with that characterization that they have sued the federal government, alleging conditions amount to torture. And yet, the facility remains open. The isolation continues, and new inmates arrive. So, what do we make of a place like ADX Florence? On one hand, the men inside it are not sympathetic figures by any conventional measure. They orchestrated bombings, they killed civilians, they betrayed their country. They looked at a crowd of marathon runners and saw a target. But here's where it gets uncomfortable, because the cost? In the eyes of neuroscientists, legal scholars, and human rights bodies, is not just paid by the prisoners. It's paid by us. When a society builds a place like ADX Florence and leaves people inside it for decades in near total sensory deprivation, not as a temporary measure, but as a permanent condition, it is making a philosophical statement. It is saying there are human beings for whom humanity is no longer required. Somewhere in there tonight, in a cell lit by fluorescent light that never turns off, in a facility where the mountains outside are invisible and the stars are just a concept, men who once shook the world are sitting in silence. Some of them are thinking about the past. Some are thinking about nothing at all. And the rest of us? We fall asleep tonight in houses full of noise and light and people, never once stopping to think about the place in the Colorado mountains where the most dangerous men in American history are slowly disappearing into the gray.